My name is Marek Rudak, and the goal of this video is to ignite your heart to lead in personal professional relationships by today reflecting on, surprise, surprise, coronavirus. And I know what you might be thinking. Well, here's another jackass pontificating about the coronavirus. But I tell you, I'll be honest with you, I'll be super vulnerable. This is a lot more real to me than in the past. I was working for the government for the first 10 years, 4 years at the West Point, another 6 years on active duty. And I'll be honest with you, back then you would I would read about recession, but I didn't really understand what it meant until I left the service and I'm looking for a job in the corporate sector, which just so happened to be at 2008, the beginning of the recession. Nobody really knew how big it was going to get or how bad it's going to get. And to me, all that really meant is that there was just less of a selection, but there was still good selection, so I was happy. But I'm telling you now, as an entrepreneur, when all you have is yourself, it's totally different. It's totally different. It's not like some kind of a big corporation where you hopefully have some kind of a budget. I know that's not always the case, but typically you do. Or some government agency that gets a bailout from or a helping hand from the government. You know, whether that's Obama, Trump, Bernie Sanders. You pick your politician. You know, when you're on your own, this is it. And so I chose to talk about what I'm really passionate about, which is love, and which is something that I wrote the book about, which is over here. And I figured that amidst this difficult, there's an opportunity to really test your principles, because if a principle is really true, it should be true regardless of the situation, whether it's good times or coronavirus times. And so, at the risk of being tone deaf, but also not risking being an ostrich either, I'll share with you some thoughts that are going through my head as I go through this very difficult time, in terms of the love and control that you see as on the diagram on the book. And I'm hoping as you hear my reflection helps you to identify the places where your mind is exerting control that is making fear worse. And I don't want to make the light of the situation, because I know that a lot of people are losing their jobs. I'll be honest with you, my clients are up too. Let's be honest. Love proficiency coach is not typically the first thing that comes to people's mind in the time of crisis. So I can totally relate. But we all, at some level, feel fear. So that I think that's a given. But what I found interesting and fascinating through my coaching session, and actually through my life, and actually something that inspired this book, is that a lot of the times we don't understand what is causing the fear, and we don't understand how some of our own inflicted wounds, because we want to control, are making situation even worse. So I'll give you an example, simple example: toilet paper. It's all over news how people are hoarding toilet paper, and you wonder, like, wow, why does this happen? And I actually read an article on CNN about it, and the article mentioned that the reason why people do it, at least part of the reason, is because it gives them a sense of control, that, hey, there's this very ambiguous situation, people are getting hurt, but at least I'm doing something about it, and I'm doing something that somebody else is doing, so that makes me feel like I'm doing the right thing. But that sense of control is actually making the fear worse, because now somebody else thinking is like, oh, I need to get some more toilet paper. And and at first, the first reaction I have is like, well, these people are, there's something wrong with them. But I'll be honest with you, I experienced very similar things, probably in a different way, but I understand the origin of that feeling, because last Friday, as you can see, I got a haircut, got my hair did, not something that happens very often. And just so happens that next to the barber that I go to is Kroger, and the parking lot was full. I mean, like, you couldn't even find a space. And I've been going there for over a year, not anywhere close the situation in the parking lot is nowhere near where what I'm used to, and that in of itself makes me wonder, like, hold on a second, shouldn't I be there? I want to control. Shouldn't I be there with these guys? Am I missing out on something? So here's the thing, guys. Regardless of the situation, like, when you really peel back the choices, it really boils down to two choices. I apologize, I'm still getting used to the camera. The choice between control and love. And in situations like that, it's helpful to understand, hey, I'm in fear, but how is my sense of control making the situation worse? And when you do that, you put yourself in a better position to respond from the place of love. And I'll give you an example. When I saw that thing in the parking lot, one of the first things I did is I called Jessie. And I was like, hey, babe, we need to go to the store. We need to buy up some stuff. And the funny thing is, even before she said anything, just me hearing myself say that made me realize, hold on a second, that doesn't sound very rational. And isn't it amazing that a lot of the times when you talk about things to a loved one or a friend or a colleague, it's not that they really solve anything, but when you just hear yourself talk about it and get it out of your mind, you realize that how irrational those fears are. And I get it. Some of the fears are very rational. It's totally different when you lose a job. I totally get it. But a lot of the times, those small things kind of spin up and become worse and worse, and that puts us in a worse mindset and it makes us make decisions that make the situation even worse and make the fear worse. Another thing that's very helpful is I know that not everybody might be blessed enough to have a loved one that they can trust in life, and so in that situation, or they might not be available at that time, or maybe they're just going through some stuff and they're not in a position to assist you. And so another good option is reaching out to a friend. And I'll give you an example. Just yesterday, I reconnected with one of my West Point classmates, and the funny thing is, I remember him from the academy, but I don't remember us talking, but back then, at least as far as I recall, and we had a really good conversation. And it's kind of funny how all these friends, like back then, to myself included, you think they're, nobody cares about Jesus and things like that. That's for losers. But it's funny how, like, when you meet these people, myself included, a few decades down the road, it's totally the opposite. And he shared with me a story. I don't want to give out too much of his testimony, but just leave at that his faith journey started with an altar call. And I've seen a whole bunch of altar calls, and I was always wondering, is like, hey, is that kind of preaching to the choir? Are these people, the usual congregation, just doing the altar calls? Because that's what I've done. But it was kind of fascinating to hear that story of his faith, how it all started with that altar call. And did that solve my problems? No. But his testimony helped me realize just the best thing to do is trust in God, and that put me back on in union with God and help me trust Him more. Obviously, I'm not perfect. I don't trust God 100%, but that helps me to close that gap in those difficult times. So, my friends, I hope that this short reflection on coronavirus, on the choice between love and control, helps you better identify how your sense of control makes things worse, and how reaching out to your loved ones can help you make more love-based choices, which will give you more fulfillment, more empowerment, and help you be a better ambassador of Christ in this world that so desperately needs it. Amen. God bless, and talk to you guys soon.